I think that just like so many of us, I am struggling to even put together the words to describe both what I'm feeling personally and what we're all feeling as a community. And it's a direct attack on bodily autonomy, and it's a direct attack on all of our freedom. No one is immune to what this um, movement of hatred is trying to accomplish. Um, and I think that we're moving closer and closer towards a fascist theocracy, and that seems to be the goal of this whole endeavor. And so, it causes me a great deal of trepidation, concern, and then it's also ignites a sense of fight that we really do have to sit on the forefront of this and be very loud, because the people that are doing this are a small minority, and we are much more powerful when we build in coalition with one another. So I think it's important to acknowledge that this has far-reaching consequences and implications for everyone, but especially our trans men and non-binary folks. As a trans masculine person who has the capacity to give birth, this is super personal, and often, folks such as myself do not get included in this conversation. So I think that it's important that we acknowledge the diversity of experiences within our community, and we honor those and put those stories to the forefront. And even more than that, I think it's important to really look at the full scope of both anti-abortion rhetoric and anti-trans rhetoric, and recognize that these are two sides of the same coin. These transgender sports bans policing, what a female body is, the right to obtain health care for trans youth, and the right to a safe abortion for cis women, trans men, and non-binary people is all the same fight. So, for many trans and non-binary folks, even within California, abortion can be inaccessible, but especially outside of California, where all of these anti-abortion laws are in place. For many low-income trans folks and trans folks of color who are not able to cross state lines to get to California, without insurance, and an abortion can cost up to $750, and that doesn't include cost of travel, childcare, food, all of that. And so, it's just going to have such a broad reach that we don't even have the full mental capacity to fully acknowledge. I think that dysphoria is one of those things that is very personal and can be a very diverse experience. But it's a general feeling of physical alienation from one's body. And so if you are looking in the mirror and you cannot recognize yourself, it can be really difficult to feel like you have the control over your life and what you're doing with your body. I think in this conversation, reproductive justice, which was a term coined by Black activists in the 90s, basically states that we need the ability to conceive on our own terms, and that must be available to everyone. And so it's just against that idea of reproductive justice, and the idea that if you are becoming a parent, that has to be your own choice. And when a choice is made against your will, it can be incredibly damaging and traumatic to carry something in your body that does not belong. Currently, I just want to start this with, we're grieving, and we're trying to be in a deep place of listening to our community right now, and what our trans siblings need at this time. So I think that the right thrives on reactionary politics and of this sort of, mass action against something else. And I think that that's important and has its place. But we are in this fight for the long run. We want to be sustainable in our activism and build coalitions across the state to create systems of support for our trans siblings. And even more than that, organizing around the intersection of anti-abortion stigmatization and anti-trans hatred, so that there's more opportunities for resistance against both. And beyond that, we are tracking key pieces of legislation like SB 107, which is a trans refugee bill, SB 923, which is the TGI Inclusive Healthcare Act, AB 2218, which is the Trans Equity and Health Fund. So just trying to both create a mobilization and a coalition of support for our community, and then also fighting for key pieces of legislation that will make a difference in the lives of trans Californians. So I think, returning back to reproductive justice, it's really important that when we talk about Roe v. Wade being overturned, that we center and acknowledge trans and non-binary and gender diverse people and experiences and stories. There can be a lot of different emotions that are going on. And I think just taking that space is really important to acknowledge that we all need the ability to have bodily autonomy. Whether you are a cis woman, whether you are a non-binary person, it doesn't matter. But I personally need cis people and cis people in power to step up and physically say, I support trans people, and this is how I'm going to support them. And actively talking to your family, to your coworkers, to your friends about this trans rhetoric that has become mainstream. I think that it's no coincidence that we're having an increased level of mainstream hatred towards trans people in comedy, in legislation, in just the vitriol online. So that has to be actively fought against, because as the trans community suffers, as women suffer, as Black and Indigenous and brown people suffer, like we all are going to suffer. And so it's important that when we fight for the bodily autonomy of one person, that we fight for the bodily autonomy of all people. So I think that that's really important. And then just, there was an Idaho state representative, I'm forgetting his name at the time, but he basically said that he sees this conversation around trans folks and around anti-abortion, that this is an extension of the pro-life argument, that he was saying, we're not talking about the life of a child, but we are talking about the potential to give life to another generation. And that is what is being controlled. And I'm very serious about the fact that we are heading very quickly in the direction of a fascist theocracy. And again, it's no coincidence that the Supreme Court has disabled and exterminated Miranda rights, allowed Border Patrol to do whatever they please, allowed police to do whatever they please, because this is going to ratchet up a level of surveillance and criminalization, so that cis people and people on the right can have the power of controlling entire groups of people, and they're not going to get the last word. Our resistance is longstanding, and our resistance is so important to believe in. I think that these systems of oppression can create a sense of apathy and nihilism. And I personally believe in a politics of hope and a politics of radically finding ways that we can increase our capacity to live life on our own terms and to be who we are. Hope is a discipline, as Marie Kaba says, and I think that we have to have that discipline of seeing a future that trans people can thrive, and seeing a future that people of color can thrive, and seeing a future that women can thrive. Like, we are all in this fight together, and we need to build in coalition with one another against this fascism, against this theocracy. And really, we do have the numbers and we do have the power, for sure. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.